IKIM Inspirasi Inforia Islami. With me, Mazlina Ismail. Alhamdulillah, in this program, Open Forum. And this week, in this session, inshallah, we'll be sharing with you, bringing to you our guest, Puan Eni Zahura Abdul Aziz, who is a fellow at Center for the Study of Sharia, Law and Politics, IKIM. Welcome. Assalamualaikum, Puan Eni Zahura.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Haja Mazlina.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. So, Puan Eni Zahura, this week we'll be sharing with our listeners on this topic, nation building and the relevance of dialogue. And we know we have just celebrated our Hari Malaysia on the 16th of September. So, inshallah, perhaps this would relate to what we're going to discuss, inshallah. Speaking on nation building, it's actually a process, a building thing, you know. So, would you like to begin with what is the process of nation building?
Alright, thank you Haja Mazlina. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Thank you again Haja Mazlina for having me over on Open Forum this week. And as you have mentioned just now, we'll be talking about nation building and the relevance of dialogue. And you're right that we recently celebrated Hari Malaysia on the 16th of September, but also we should not forget that we also celebrated our 64th Independence Day on the 31st of August this year. And on Malaysia Day, we should know what is the significance of Independence Day, what is the significance of Malaysia Day, whereby Malaysia Day is actually the day when Malaysia as a federation was formed, which includes the union of Peninsula Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak. So these two important chapters in our history in our yearly calendar actually are significant to the Malaysian and very important to all Malaysians, and must be duly understood and remembered by all, not just by certain segments of people in the society, but must be understood and must be properly internalized and remembered by all. So first, we have to understand what is nation building. So when we're talking about nation, we must realize that a nation is built not just upon the liberation of its land from occupation of foreign powers. So we know when we're talking about Independence Day that we celebrated this recently, we're talking about how on the 31st of August 1957, Malaysia gained independence from the British colonization. So this aspect is one understanding that we have to understand. One aspect that we have to understand when we're talking about what is nation. It is not just centered upon liberation of a land from its foreign occupation. Yeah. So nation is actually built upon the context of the identity, the togetherness, and also the shared visions of its people. So the components of nation are integral actually when we're talking about nation building. So back to your question, what is nation building? What is the process of nation building? It is actually the process whereby a society which is made up of groups with diverse origins, with histories, with languages, different cultures, and different religions come together with the boundaries of an independent state. So, and these come about through a formal constitution and legal framework, a systematic public education system, an integrated national economy, shared symbols and values. So, what are the significance or what are the importance of these components that we must have as a nation? Most importantly is to achieve unity amidst these diversities. So this is a very important aspect that we must understand when we're talking about the nation building process. So this is not mere liberating one country from colonization, from foreign powers, from occupation and so on. It's also about bringing together the diversities that exist in the nation from every aspect, to be able to come together and create this national unity, as we always say. Okay, so the ultimate goals of the nation, for the nation of these characteristics, are actually to be able to peacefully coexist with one another. So, and we must also share at least a common identity as citizens of the state, and also as citizens, we must positively contribute to its development. So another fundamental aspect is actually peace. So when we're talking about nation building, it's also stressing on the element of peace.
Mm-hmm.
So peace is a fundamental component of community development and for personal growth and survival, thus imperative to the notion of nation building. So imagine if we live in a country, or we live in a place whereby there's conflict, whereby peace is actually absence. So this is another dimension that we need to talk about, that we need to understand. When talking about nation building, we're talking about one aspect is unity, and the other one is actually talking about peace as a component of this. So, and I would add that peaceful coexistence where people from diverse backgrounds, identities, and cultures are able to live in harmony with each other. And this can only be achieved when we learn to respect, we learn to uphold the principles of tolerance, we learn to accept the differences, and the elements of justice become the important value in this kind of setting. So this is another important aspect when we're talking about this topic of nation building. So as people who love peace, right, even as Muslims especially, in Islam, peace is actually as is important, is actually an essence of our relation with others. Like there's so many verses in the Quran which talks about this, and in an ayat in the Quran, Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala said, there shall be no compulsion in acceptance of the religion. The right cause has become clear from the wrong. So whoever disbelieves in Tawhid and believes in Allah has grasped the most trustworthy handful with no break in it. And Allah is hearing and knowing. This is in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 256. I think some of us recite this every morning. La ikraha fid din, qad tabayyana rushdu minal ghayy. This verse is very important. And in another ayah, Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala said, Allah does not forbid you from those who do not fight you because of religion and do not expel you from your homes, from being righteous towards them and acting justly towards them. Indeed, Allah loves those who act justly. This is in Surah Al-Mumtahana, verse 8. So, in the verse, La ikraha fid din, there shall be no compulsion in acceptance of religion. So, this stress on the importance, on the element of peace in Islam. So Islam is all about peace, and I think, and when we're talking about nation building in this regard, we are also stressing on the essence of peace in our relations with others, especially in the context of Malaysia. Mas. So this is a
Right.
process of nation building for Malaysia, which is very important, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, you said just now unity amidst diversity. You
Yeah,
see, that would actually, easy said than done. And it takes a lot of work, actually, right?
yeah.
And different generations would have different challenges. So, the question here, what for Malaysia, what are the challenges to nation building?
All right. It's right when you say that different generation have different challenges. So our forefathers, during the early period of, prior to independence, the challenge is actually how to gain independence from for Malaysia. And after that is actually the leaders faced with the challenge of how to build the new independent Malaysia. So as time goes by, different as you said, different generation, they face different challenges in the process of nation building. So it is not just an as a process which has to be dealt with by those leaders or by those who are involved, especially during the early stage of independence. But as is today, we as those who are, we can say the younger generation compared to those who are, who were there during the early years of independence, we face our own challenge as well. So when we're talking about nation building, we have to understand that our cultural and our ethnic mosaic is actually one aspect or one challenge that we must deal with, carefully. because differences are there, and we have to understand that sometimes conflict or disharmony exists because of differences like this. We've
Mm-hmm.
seen in many other countries whereby they cannot, or they fail to manage ethnic differences or cultural differences, and this bring about conflict in their countries, and so on.
Yeah.
So differences in political affiliations and ideologies. So this is also very much close to us, because we know that in the Malaysian context we have so many political parties, and sometimes partisan politics create this disharmony. So it is
Mm-hmm.
up to us on how to make sure that um, when we are involved in partisan politics, we do not let this to become and cause of disharmony in the society. So we're talking about challenges. We're also talking about difference in socio-economic backgrounds. So this is another aspect whereby um, we have to understand that this process of nation building require us to be able um, to address the concerns of everyone in the society. So the poor, the middle class, the higher class in the society, you've got this B40, M40, and T20, all this categorization. Nation building must address, all issues or all problems faced by all these segments in society. So although the country has sailed through more than 60 years of independence, we also realize that I have said earlier, uh, nation building and unity proved to be the most challenging aspect of governance for the country's leadership. If not, we'll not be talking about importance of unity, importance of understanding, contributing to nation building, the whole process, and so on. So other challenges that we might want to address is actually issue of prejudice in society, lack of social cohesion, and also even at this point of time, social media pose one challenge to the process of nation building. Um, Sometimes you've got the roadmap right, we've got the plans right, we've got the framework right, but sometimes there are avenues where irresponsible individuals or irresponsible groups would cause problems to this roadmap, to these plans, to this framework, which will in the end need us to go back to the roadmap and need us to address certain issues that sometimes should not be addressed because it's irrelevant to the context of the Malaysian society. But then we have to understand that these are among the challenges that we face as a society in Malaysia, and as a nation. We must face this together.
Right, inshallah. So, in what way does one of the ways for us to create harmony is through dialogue? In
Yeah.
what way does dialogue contribute to the process of nation building?
Okay, so the topic that we're going to discuss today is actually about how to enhance nation building, and then how dialogue is actually relevant to this process. So how does dialogue fit in the process of nation building? It is important actually for us to understand that dialogue, which is often refers to as peaceful conversation between two or more parties, actually aims at finding common understanding on a particular topic or issue. So when talking about dialogue, this is actually what we mean. Dialogue is actually a learning process and conducted with respect of the differences and even on commonalities of ideas and principles. So dialogue is not just about looking at differences. We can actually agree on issues, and we can actually still go through the process of dialogue for us to share what is important, what is relevant, and then what are the important aspects that we must address in a particular issue or topic or concern. So when we're talking about today, you've got the concept of keluarga Malaysia or the Malaysian family,
Yeah.
as what is envisioned by the Honourable Prime Minister of Malaysia. This now has become the framework of nation building during this time of pandemic and beyond actually. So it needs to uphold dialogue as mechanism of engagement with various state and non-state actors. So you have to understand that the dynamism of dialogue allows for it to become the most constructive form of interaction. So when we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about dialogue, we have to understand that it has to be productive. In its relevance to nation building. So a productive dialogue process will provide government with the much needed input for public policy formulation and also provide the best platform for the government to share its directions and obtain the necessary public feedbacks. So, therefore, for this purpose, dialogue should not be an exclusive exercise that only involves certain elite groups in the society and policymakers. Sometimes we know that there are the process, dialogue does take place, but it only involves certain elite groups, and it doesn't reach out to the masses effectively. So, we have to understand that dialogue, when we're talking about dialogue, it has to be an impactful one. So it must be made an approach for interaction at all level of society. So
Mm-hmm.
we know that the pandemic affects the people's life and livelihood, and it is unprecedented. So the time of government knows best is actually very much obsolete in this context, and I think nowadays people also know that engagement is very important when talking about finding the best solution to issues and problems. Yeah, and it
Mm-hmm.
is high time to incorporate ideas and opinions from members of the societies from all walks of life. So this is where we understand that dialogue is actually the most important avenue, or one important mode of interaction, of engagement between the government and also all levels of society. Mas.
Thank you, Panani. You said just now that dialogue must be impactful. Otherwise, it's just one-way communication. Two people
Yeah.
come together only to be heard. That would
Mm,
not be impactful. So, how do you think? How should
yes.
the mechanism of dialogue be empowered to ensure a successful nation-building process?
All right.
Mm.
Okay, you're right when you say that sometimes, when we see the process of dialogue, it is just about um, presentations and, getting
Mm.
feedbacks um, to that presentation. Okay, but then to make it impactful, we must understand that dialogue is actually whereby it's a process of for you to listen and to be heard. All right, and then it's a platform whereby you can actually contribute your ideas. You can contribute your viewpoints so that it will be better understood by others. So when we're talking about dialogue in the nation building process, it must be made a common form of interaction among people of diverse background. And in the context of our multicultural and multi-religious identity of the Malaysian society, we have seen that dialogue is one way whereby we can use that platform to share the differences that exist between these groups. So there is this what is known as dialogue of life, whereby people from the different religious, cultural, and ethnic groups come together to discuss issues affecting humanity, such as poverty, environment, and social responsibilities, as a form of effort towards achieving the common agreement in finding comprehensive solution. So if we give dialogue a chance in as a platform for engagement for all levels of society, is actually giving us the opportunity to get that comprehensive solution, right? So this form of dialogue, which is dialogue of life, help to create a sense of unity and also mutual understanding, which will then will help to contribute towards the nation building agenda of Keluarga Malaysia, as we know. And in short, we just need to talk to each other more so that we understand the differences and similarities that exist within us as a society. So we dialogue is actually a mechanism whereby the first process is to understand that there are differences, and we have to acknowledge that these differences do exist. We cannot deny the fact that in reality the differences what shape us as Malaysian society. But then how do we manage, or how do we address these differences that exist among us. So one way is to actually engage in dialogue, and so that we listen to other people and what their viewpoints, respect them for that viewpoints, and also when we're talking about dialogue of life, is to come together and understand that we can actually find this solution together through that differences of viewpoints. So inshallah, if we are able to do that, we are able to empower dialogue to that level in society, inshallah, the nation building process will become, I would not say not a problem, but will help the building process for Malaysia, inshallah. So
Inshallah.
this is one aspect that we need to address, or we need to properly understand, yeah, Mas?
Right, inshallah. So we're talking about nation building and the relevance of dialogue. How would you like to conclude our discussion this week, Puan Anizara?
All right. Okay. When we're talking about nation building in the context of Malaysia
Mm.
and our current keluarga Malaysia concept, we have to understand what it means actually. So we have to understand, like any family, keluarga Malaysia is like a tree that grows and sprawls into different branches and leaves, but stems from the same firm roots. Firm roots actually. We come from the same historical understanding of what Malaysia is, and who we are as people of the nation. So, keluarga Malaysia must find unity through commonalities, through shared values and respect of differences, agree on the similar threats, similar challenges that we face, the concerns that we have, and what are these threats to its foundation of keluarga Malaysia, and we must work in unison to overcome these challenges. So the strength of keluarga Malaysia, the strength of Malaysia as a nation, is also very much dependent upon leaders who are actually the prime movers of the nation building agenda, because we cannot just say that it's a common citizen that must make sure the nation building agenda or nation building is achieved, but then leaders are actually the prime movers, because they are the one who set the policies, they are the one who actually design the roadmap and so on, with as I've said just now, if it's able through dialogue with inputs from all people in the society. um, but leaders must actually be able to listen, and we must be able to understand, be empathetic, and be sympathetic to the struggles and welfare of the people. So in Islam, when we're talking about leadership, it stresses on one important aspect of the whole process, which is the concept of amanah or
Mm-hmm.
trust. So leaders are appointed or elected to their positions to their for their capabilities, and also because they are seen by the people as individuals who are able to safeguard the trust or the amanah and carry out that responsibility sincerely and earnestly, and they are actually accountable to God when we're talking about the concept of amanah and leadership. So um, nation building, I would conclude that needs more than just slogans. So we cannot just limit ourselves to just understand as being keluarga Malaysia or the Malaysian family as just being a setup where everybody, is there living in one country together, sharing the same food, or sharing, celebrating the same celebrations that is there in our calendar every year, but it needs convictions from all.
Yeah.
So you and me, we have our roles to play in order
Mm-hmm.
for us to make sure or to ensure the framework or the nation building process of keluarga Malaysia is achieved. And it also comprised of the government and leaders from all segments of the society, and ultimately people of this beloved nation must come together, must agree on what is important for Malaysia. And as we have said so many times,
Mm-hmm.
we are facing this pandemic, and recently we have been given so much room for so much freedom nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to understand that it is still there, the threat of COVID-19 is still there, it still exists. So as responsibility citizen, to actually follow the SOPs and be wary of the threat is also important. So we
Right.
cannot just because freedom is given, just because the liberty is there doesn't mean that we should abuse it. All right, we must play our role, and we must understand that it comes with responsibility. Freedom and liberty is given, but with responsibility. That is
Right.
something that we must have in mind. And we actually have to understand that there are times that we are able to come together as a nation during the high time of success previously, and
Mm-hmm.
also recently during the Olympic, the Paralympics, and so on.
Right.
So we felt motivated, joyful. We shared the sadness and also the happiness, the joyous celebration of the achievements of our sportsmen and sportswomen. But
Mm-hmm.
we must realize that this is actually a point of strength for us to be able to believe in one another, be able to actually come together, and only then we can actually make Keluarga Malaysia the nation that we can be proud of. So when
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about nation building, it's actually creating this kind of togetherness, creating this understanding that it is the responsibility of all, not just certain groups in the society, or not just the leaders to make sure the objectives of nation building is achieved, but it's everyone's role and everyone's responsibility. You, me, even anyone who's there in the society who feels that they are very insignificant to the nation, but actually um, each individual that calls themselves Malaysians, they have a role to play. It's how much we are able to play in our own capacity. Do not be overthinking to the extent that, oh, we are not policymakers, we are not the government, or we are just someone who's sitting in a room, working from home,
Mm-hmm.
finishing our filing and do things like that. But actually, if we really look at what is that work, then we would
Mm-hmm.
understand that in the long run, nation building is about this each and every one of us. So, inshallah, so much. We hope that our listeners are better, will better understand how we can actually empower dialogue, the importance of dialogue. We need to talk to one another through the process of dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Dialogue can exist in many ways, Yamas. It doesn't have to be in a proper setting whereby you need to sit in a hall
Yeah.
or in a classroom or in a lecture hall to be able to conduct dialogue. It can
Yeah.
actually exist in, in the supermarket, or even in your sundry shop. When we talk about someone who comes from different background, you meet someone, Chinese lady or an Indian shopkeeper, you can actually engage in dialogue. So it is
Mm-hmm.
there on how we perceive dialogue and how we engage
Yeah.
with one another, and
Right.
giving that ideas, inshallah. So hopefully it will benefit our listeners in understanding the concept
Inshallah.
of building a dialogue. Yeah.
Hopefully, inshallah, as we say that we live as a family, a happy or peaceful family actually takes a lot of efforts, mutual
Yes.
respect, mutual love for each other, and having a sincere intentions towards living peacefully with one another.
Yes.
Correct,
Yes.
inshallah.
Yes.
So we hope this would be, the main reason why we want to achieve peace in our nation building, so that we can move forward with other things, success, in our life, inshallah, as a nation as well. So thank you very much, Pak Anizahura, for all your sharing this week. We hope to see you again next week for other
Inshallah.
topics, inshallah. So until then, have a good weekend, remaining weekend. So, assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam